So before you can do any sort of empirical work in economics, the major input, other than an idea of what you want to do, is data, of course, right? We need the numbers that we're going to run our stats on. Now, in some ways, this is a bit challenging for you as undergrads because typically in your econometrics classes, whether even basic or fairly advanced, you will learn all sorts of sophisticated methods for drawing causal inference from observational data. Nevertheless, all of those methods are totally useless without the data itself, and typically our classes don't really teach you where to get the data. So this is a very, very brief introduction into one way to get data, which is to look for existing data sets, right? So oftentimes the most interesting research involves creating new data, but you can also do some pretty interesting research just finding other people's data and using it in a different way than was originally intended. So how do we go about doing that? Now, so typically the first place you would go to look for a data set, if you have a fairly specific idea of what you want, is really where nowadays we go for everything anytime we want to find something on the internet, which is Google, right? So let's suppose that I were interested in finding a household data set on Thailand, say rural Thailand. So we could say household data set, rural Thailand. And what pops up? Well, here we have something from Duncan Thomas, he's a development economist at Duke, just giving you a nice list. He's actually got a nice compiled list of household surveys here. So if you look Thailand, he's got this non-wrong project here, and around here this major one, the Townsend Thai project, one of the biggest data sets, one I've worked with quite a bit. And he's got even more here, right? Survey on status of women and fertility. So this is a panel done across many different countries, or not a panel, but a cross-country set of data. And Thailand is one of the countries covered. And the World Fertility Surveys here, right? And Thailand is, again, one of those countries. So these are all household data sets. These are all on just one person's compilation. Keep looking down, you can find, okay, this is the same data set that was mentioned. Townsend Thai project, again, also mentioned by Duncan Thomas. And you can just keep going down this list, right? All sorts of data. Now, there's no guarantee that any of these data sets is exactly what you're looking for, but these are all places to start. You can do this with almost anything, right? You just ask Google, and it shall look around, and it does a fairly good job. Now, another option is to turn to what I would call the usual suspects. What I mean by that is there are certain websites that will aggregate data sets and make it relatively easy to search through them. So in some ways, these are sort of typical places where you would turn. So what are examples of this? So one is the Federal Reserve Economic Database. This is called FRED for short. If you search for FRED in Google, it is the very first thing that comes up. This is a mark of how geeky the internet has turned, that FRED is above and beyond else the Federal Reserve Economic Data. So FRED has all sorts of stuff, right? So you can see here it promises 424,000 US and international time series. So if I wanted, for example, industrial production, India. And look, production of total industry in India. It's the first thing that comes up, right? So FRED is a great place to turn for macroeconomic data. What I mean by that is data on the entire state of certainly the US economy. It does really well about the US, but it also has data from around the world. Another option is ICPSR. This is the Inter-University Consortium on Political Science and Research, Political and Social Research, sorry. So this is based at, my old alma mater, University of Michigan. And so you can basically go over here, find data. So obviously at some point you'll want to log in, create an account. If you do that from on campus, you'll be able to make an account and get access to all of that. So looking through here, there's all sorts of stuff. So there's a typical search bar, and you can use that the same way you'd use Google. Sometimes it's also useful to actually browse data. So over here, for example, if you drill down by topics, so let's suppose I were interested in elections. So elections, there's the election study series, election returns, merged electoral ecological data, that's a new one, political participation, all these things. So ICPSR is especially good for political data. It's usually where I turn if I want to find information about elections, especially in the US. Last one that's worth noting is the World Bank. In particular, the World Bank Living Standards Measurement Surveys. This is a really nice set of household data. Some of them are panels, some of them are not, but they're all really nice data sets on households. So the World Bank has a microdata catalog. This lets you basically go browse through all sorts of household level data sets. So for example, if you want a data set on income and other parts of living standards in Albania for 2012 or 2008 or 2005, 2004, 2002, on and on and on. Know everything you would ever want to know about Albania. One thing that's worth noting is that these 2004, 2002, and presumably there's also a 2003, they constitute a panel. So a panel is a survey that they'll initially survey a bunch of households, and then they'll do their best to find the same households 1 or 2 or 3 years later, so that you can track changes in the well-being or behavior of a specific household. All right, so that's just a quick overview of finding data. Now, before I let you go and cut you loose on doing that, I want to give you a general sense of the type of data out there. So the most basic form of data you'll find are either comma-separated value files, these are CSV files, or just Excel files. These are both fairly similar in that they consist of a bunch of rows and columns, right? So you're probably pretty familiar with this type of data. Let me just give you an example. So let's see over here. So here is an example of a data set I actually constructed myself by scraping from the internet, but this could be the form you would find it in here. So basically each row here is a separate candidate who stood for office. Let's see here, this is the state in India, this is the constituency in which the candidate competed, this is the name of the candidate here, their returns, or election returns, the fraction of votes they got, etc., etc. All right, pretty basic, right? And now a more complicated form of data, but one that economists like quite a bit, are data sets that are constructed for specific statistical packages. Now, the most important for economists, at least economists doing the type of work that I do, is a package called Stata. So I have other videos here that will help you learn how to use Stata, but right now I just want to show you what a Stata dataset looks like. So for example, we can pull up the Penn World Tables. This is a cross-country dataset on things like real income in different countries. So you can see here the extension is .dta, so pwt.dta. So once you pull it open in Stata, you can see it here, describe the data, etc., etc. Basically, what I want you to know right now is that this is data that we can open in this particular statistical package, and it's really convenient for running regressions, etc. The other possibilities are SPSS data. So SPSS is another statistical package. Another option is SAS. Those are the most common basic statistical packages. Last, I want to tell you about spatial data. This is very important. It's becoming bigger and bigger in economics. It's actually become pretty mainstream. A lot of my work involves spatial analyses as well. These are data that are not just numbers, but also locations. So In this lab, we will usually work with spatial data in ArcGIS and its packages. So ArcMap is one example of a package that can handle this type of data. And the types of data set you will find are, I'll mention two major ones. One is called a shapefile. The other type is a raster. Let me go through each of these one by one. So here's a good example of a shapefile. So here are shapefiles of all the various administrative boundaries in India. So for example, find here a shapefile of the states of India. So, so it looks like my version of ArcGIS here is not registered, so I'll just quickly hop onto my work computer for a moment and pull up the same data sets here. So basically this is sort of what ArcGIS looks like. Let me just pull up a new map for a second. So here we have blank map. So if you are working with ArcGIS, I have other videos that will give you a basic guide in how to work with ArcGIS, but right now I just want to show you. So a shapefile will look like this. So when you find it, it will usually be, and there might be several files that come with it, but the most basic unit is a file with the extension .shp, like this one. So you can see here so these are the states of India as of 1991. So you can see it's actually consists of several files all together. So oftentimes you'll find a shapefile in the form of a zip file, which you would then have to extract. But once you find them, you can just basically take them, drag them onto ArcGIS, and lo and behold, there we have this nice map of India. So this is one type of file, and so what's interesting about this is a shapefile is used to represent either points or polygons or lines. All right. The other possibility is a raster. A raster is, the idea is that for every point, so they will define points as an area of some size. For each of those little areas, they will have a value that quantifies something. So this will be a little bit easier to explain with an example. So suppose here we look for the Global Agroecological Zones project. Here we have following rasters are basically levels of rainfall in millimeters at every point on the planet. So here we have the typical rainfall, every point on the planet, for the reference period, what they call the reference period here. So this is from 1961 to 1991 on average. And so basically here you can see lighter values are places where it rained more, darker values are places where it rained less. And so see, so here I've overlaid it with our map of India, which I just added on, but you can see the actual raster goes on for the entire world. So you can see it's defined everywhere except in the oceans. All right, so that's just a rough idea of these two types of spatial data. All right, so one of them is shapefiles and one of them is rasters. So rasters will often come in the form of .tiff files. They're like pictures actually. But with their georeference, so you can actually put them on a map and know where they show up. All right. All right. So before I let you go, let me give you a couple of exercises just so you can practice looking for data. So first, I want you to find me a household level data set that includes both income and weight. So the weight of the respondent in, say, either pounds or kilograms, whatever. Next, I want you to find me a consumer price index for Chile. All right, Chile, the Latin American country. All right, and last but not least, I want you to find me, what do I want you to find me? Find me the boundaries of all the states or regions, I forget whether they're states or regions, in Nigeria. All right, so those are the things, those three things. Find them for me, see what you turn up, and get back to me and let me know what you find.